Did you know a single government order once killed tens of millions of people, and it started with sparrows? In 1958, Mao Zedong declared war on sparrows. He believed each bird ate enough grain to feed one person for a year, so he mobilized the entire country. Hundreds of millions of people took to the streets. They banged drums, crashed pots, waved flags, and screamed. The goal was simple: keep the birds in the air until they died. And it worked. Sparrows dropped from the sky by the millions, but scientists had warned him. Remove the sparrows, and the insects they eat will have nothing stopping them. Mao ignored it. Within 2 years, locusts swarmed across China in numbers no one had ever seen. They consumed entire harvests. Fields that should have fed hundreds of millions of people were stripped bare. The famine that followed lasted 4 years. Estimates say between 15 and 55 million people starved to death. The scariest part is not that one man made this mistake. It is that no one was allowed to stop him. Did you know a serial killer once wrote a 40,000-word document proving the prison system made him who he was, and criminologists still agree with him? Karl Panzram confessed to 21 murders across multiple continents. He robbed, burned, and destroyed on a scale that took decades to piece together. But what made him different wasn't the crimes. It was the writing. In prison, Panzram wrote his autobiography by hand, not to ask for forgiveness, to explain, in cold, specific detail, exactly how it happened. It started at age 11, a Minnesota reform school. He went in as a troubled kid and came out knowing only one thing: that the people in charge were crueler than he ever was. He named the guards, described what they did, traced every decision that followed back to that place. A sympathetic guard smuggled the manuscript out. It was eventually published. Panzram didn't want appeals or sympathy. He demanded his execution be moved faster. They hanged him in 1930. The document survived, and the institutions he described never fully answered for what he wrote. Did you know a wanted child abuser once built his own country inside a country, and a military dictatorship paid him to run it? Paul Schaefer fled Germany in the 1960s. He was facing charges for molesting children in his church youth group, so he disappeared. He reappeared in the mountains of southern Chile, where he built something that looked like a farm. It had fields, a church, a school. It also had watchtowers, armed guards, and walls that kept 300 German settlers completely cut off from the outside world. Nobody left without permission. Nobody spoke freely. Children were separated from their parents and raised under total control. Then came 1973. Pinochet seized Chile in a violent coup, and his secret police needed somewhere quiet to take prisoners. They found Schaefer. Colonia Dignidad became a black site. People were driven through the gates and never seen again. No records, no bodies recovered, just silence. 2 separate machines of horror running through the same fence line, each one hiding the other. Some places are built to make people disappear. This one was built for exactly that, twice over. Did you know a Chinese emperor built his own tomb to last forever, and it may have killed him? Qin Shi Huang unified China over 2,000 years ago. He was terrified of death, so he ordered the greatest tomb ever built. 700,000 workers spent 38 years constructing it. Ancient texts describe what lies inside: rivers of liquid mercury flowing in patterns shaped like the geography of China itself. Mechanical seas designed to flow forever beneath the burial mound. For centuries, historians assumed that was mythology. Then soil surveys in the 20th century found mercury levels above the tomb running 100 times higher than normal. The concentrations matched the exact layout the ancient texts described. The tomb has never been opened, but here is the part that closes the loop. Qin Shi Huang was almost certainly killed by mercury pills. His own alchemist gave them to him, promising immortality. The workers who built the innermost chambers were sealed inside alive when he died, to protect the secret. A man who tried to cheat death, poisoned by his own cure, buried inside a tomb built on mass murder. It is still down there. Did you know 5 young men with intellectual disabilities vanished after a basketball game? And the only explanation left is the one nobody can explain? It was February 1978 in Chico, California. 5 men attended a college basketball game. Then they were gone. Months passed. When searchers finally found them, they were 50 miles away, deep in the Sierra Nevada mountains, in winter, across terrain that experienced hikers would struggle to survive. Most of them were dead, but one man was found alive inside a remote cabin, barely breathing, starved nearly to nothing. He could not explain how he got there. He could not explain anything. The cabin had food, enough to last. Some of it had been used. There were no vehicles, no roads leading there, no tracks in the snow that made any sense. Investigators looked at every possibility: exposure, foul play, wandering. None of it held up against the distance, the terrain, and the winter conditions. 5 men with no survival training crossed 50 miles of frozen mountain wilderness, and nobody has ever explained how. Did you know the most prolific serial killer in recorded history was released from prison, and nobody knows where he is right now? Pedro Lopez confessed to murdering over 300 young girls across Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia. He would lure them away from markets and villages. Most were never found. When he was finally caught in 1980, police didn't believe him at first. The number was too high, too impossible. But he led investigators to graves, dozens of them. He was convicted and sent to an Ecuadorian prison. He served 18 years. In 1998, psychiatrists evaluated him. They declared him sane. They declared him no longer a danger to society, and they let him go. Think about that process for a moment. Someone reviewed 300 confessions, weighed the evidence, signed the paperwork, and opened the door. Since his release, there have been occasional reported sightings. Colombia, 2002. A warrant was issued. Nothing came of it. After that, the trail goes cold. He is somewhere in the world right now. No one is saying where. Did you know one man accidentally saved the world and was punished for it? September 26, 1983. A Soviet bunker called Serpukhov 15. It's just past midnight when the alarm starts screaming. The early warning system is showing 5 American nuclear missiles, inbound, headed straight for the Soviet Union. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is the only officer on duty. Protocol is clear. He is supposed to pick up the phone and trigger the response chain. Soviet missiles would launch. Millions would die within the hour. He has 23 minutes to decide. And here is the thing that stopped him. 5 missiles. A real American first strike would not be 5 missiles. It would be hundreds. You don't start a nuclear war and hold back. So he sat there. He logged it as a system malfunction. He told no one above him. He was right. A satellite sensor had caught sunlight bouncing off clouds at exactly the wrong angle. A glitch, not a war. Petrov was not given a medal. He was investigated for filing incomplete paperwork that night, then quietly reassigned. He made the right call alone, in the dark, knowing he could be ending everything. And history barely remembers his name. Did you know that on one of the deadliest nights in offshore oil history, following the rules was a death sentence? July 6, 1988. The Piper Alpha oil platform, North Sea. A gas leak ignited and tore the rig apart in a chain of explosions that turned the ocean itself into fire. 226 men were on board. 167 of them died. But here is the part that haunts people. The survivors were mostly the ones who broke protocol, who ran to the edge, who jumped 60 to 100 feet into burning water rather than wait inside like they were told. The men who followed instructions, who sheltered in the muster stations, who trusted the system, burned alive, waiting for a rescue that never came. The platform's firefighting pumps had been switched off for routine maintenance. Nearby rescue ships watched from a safe distance. Their orders didn't authorize them to enter an active fire zone, so they waited too. The platform had every system designed to save lives, and at every single moment that mattered, those systems did nothing. Did you know a man once faked sailing around the world, alone on the ocean, until his own mind turned against him? In 1968, Donald Crowhurst entered the Golden Globe race, a solo nonstop voyage around the entire planet. His boat wasn't ready. He knew it. But the money, the sponsors, the cameras, the crowds, they were all waiting. So he left anyway. Weeks in, the vessel started failing. Turning back meant losing everything, facing everyone. So instead, he did something else. He stopped sailing and started lying. For months, he drifted in the South Atlantic, transmitting fake coordinates, pretending to race. He filled one logbook with false positions for the world to read. He kept a second one with the truth. But the ocean is a long time to be alone with a lie. His final logbook entries stopped making sense. Pages of scattered thoughts, fragmented equations, a man trying to build a new reality because the real one had become unbearable. His boat was found drifting in July 1969. No body, no distress call, just the logbooks, left behind like a confession nobody asked for. Did you know 2 women accidentally carried out a state assassination because they thought they were filming a prank show? February 13, 2017. Kuala Lumpur International Airport, one of the busiest terminals in Southeast Asia. Kim Jong-nam, the estranged older brother of North Korea's leader, was waiting for his flight. He never made it. 2 women approached him separately, seconds apart. Each one smeared something across his face with her bare hand and walked away. They had practiced this exact move for months. North Korean handlers paid them small amounts of cash and told them it was a hidden camera show. Wipe something on a stranger's face, laugh for the cameras, collect the money. What they wiped was VX nerve agent, one of the most lethal substances ever created. A single drop on skin can kill within minutes. Kim Jong-nam was dead before he reached the hospital. The handlers had already boarded flights out of the country before he even collapsed. Both women were eventually acquitted. They genuinely had no idea what they were part of. North Korea had built the perfect weapon. People who couldn't confess to a crime they didn't know they committed. Did you know the United States once imprisoned a woman for over 2 decades and she never committed a single crime? Her name was Mary Mallon. She was an Irish immigrant and a cook in New York City in the early 1900s. She was also a typhoid carrier, meaning her body carried the bacteria and spread it to others without ever making her sick. She had no idea. No fever, no symptoms, nothing. But a health inspector traced a string of typhoid outbreaks through her employment history and found her name at the center of everyone. In 1907, the government took her by force and put her on North Brother Island in the East River. No trial, no charges, no end date. They released her 3 years later with conditions she eventually broke. Then they brought her back. She spent 26 years on that island. She died there in 1938, not because of what she did, because of what her body was. The government decided she was too dangerous to be free, and that was enough. Did you know the deadliest plane crash in history was caused by the one man who was supposed to prevent it? March 27, 1977, Tenerife, Spain. A thick fog had settled over Los Rodeos Airport, so dense the pilots could barely see the runway in front of them. 2 fully loaded Boeing 747s were preparing to take off. Together, they carried 644 people. The KLM captain was named Jacob Van Zanten. He wasn't just any pilot. He was KLM's chief flight safety officer. He wrote the safety manuals. He trained the other pilots. His face was literally on KLM's magazine ads. And on that runway, he pushed his engines to full throttle without clearance to take off. The Pan Am 747 was still sitting directly in his path. They never saw each other until it was too late. 583 people died in seconds. Investigators later found the cause wasn't recklessness. It was fog, a misheard radio transmission, and one small moment of certainty from a man who had spent his entire career teaching others to be careful. The safest man in the room was the last one anyone should have doubted. Did you know the United States government gave war criminals full immunity in exchange for their research notes? After World War II ended, American officials flew to Japan with a very specific offer. Shiro Ishii had commanded Unit 731, a secret facility buried in occupied Manchuria. Inside, prisoners were infected with plague. Some were frozen alive to study frostbite. Others were placed in pressure chambers until their eyes burst. Thousands died. Every death was documented. The data was meticulous, detailed, the kind of biological warfare research that would take decades to replicate. So American officials made a calculation. The research was worth more than justice. In 1948, Ishii and his entire team received full immunity from war crimes prosecution. No tribunal, no charges. The paperwork was signed, filed, and quietly buried. The data moved into American biological weapons programs. Ishii lived freely in Japan until 1959. He died of throat cancer at age 67, not in a prison cell, in his own home, in his own bed. Did you know that the evidence in Karen Silkwood's case suggested someone was putting plutonium into her food? Karen Silkwood was 28 years old. She worked as a lab analyst at a nuclear fuel plant in Oklahoma, and she had started collecting documents, safety violations, falsified inspection records on nuclear fuel rods. She was building a case. Then she started testing positive for plutonium contamination, not just at work, at home, in her refrigerator, in her body at levels that made no sense for accidental exposure. The Atomic Energy Commission investigated. Their own findings pointed to contamination that could not be explained by normal workplace contact. The amounts were too high. The locations were too specific. On November 13, 1974, she got in her car to drive to a New York Times reporter. She had a folder of documents with her. Her car was found in a concrete culvert. She was dead. The documents were gone. No charges were ever filed. The contamination was real. The documents existed, and someone knew exactly where she was going. Did you know the CIA once paid a doctor to erase people's minds? His name was Dr. Ewan Cameron. He ran the psychiatry department at McGill University. He had been president of the American Psychiatric Association. On paper, he was one of the most respected psychiatrists alive. His patients came in for anxiety, for mild depression. Some were just struggling to cope. What happened to them inside his ward was something else entirely. Cameron kept patients asleep with drugs for weeks at a time. He blasted electroshock through their brains at levels far beyond anything considered safe. He played recorded messages on loop for hundreds of hours, trying to wipe their personalities clean and build new ones from scratch. He called it psychic driving. The CIA called it useful. They funded the whole program under a project called MK Ultra. Patients came out not knowing their own children. Cameron was never charged, never tried. He died in 1967 with his reputation mostly intact. Canada quietly paid survivors compensation decades later. The most terrifying part was never the experiments. It was how normal everything around them looked. Did you know a government scientist was murdered and the evidence sat in a file for 40 years? Frank Olson worked at Fort Detrick, developing biological weapons for the United States Army. In November 1953, CIA operatives invited him to a retreat in rural Maryland. They slipped LSD into his drink without telling him. 9 days later, he fell from the 13th floor of a New York hotel room. The CIA called it a suicide and buried the file. They kept it buried for 20 years. In 1994, his son Eric had the body exhumed. A forensic pathologist named James Stars examined what was left. He found blunt force trauma to the skull. The injury happened before the fall, not because of it. The physical evidence at the window did not match a man jumping on his own. No one was ever charged. That is the part that stays with you. Not the cover-up, not the Cold War secrets, but the fact that the evidence was right there, clear and documented, and the people with the power to act simply chose not to. Did you know one man is responsible for both feeding half the world and helping invent chemical warfare? His name was Fritz Haber. In the early 1900s, he cracked one of the hardest problems in science. He figured out how to pull nitrogen straight from the air and turn it into fertilizer. That discovery changed everything. Today, roughly 4 billion people are alive because of it. But Haber had another side. When World War I broke out, he turned his chemistry toward killing. He developed chlorine gas for the German military and personally supervised its release on soldiers at Ypres in 1915. Thousands died, choking in the mud. His wife, Clara, was also a chemist. She begged him to stop. He refused. The night before he left to oversee another gas attack, she walked into their garden and shot herself. He left the next morning anyway. Then the story closes in a way that is almost impossible to sit with. The company he helped build later produced Zyklon B. The Nazis used it to murder his own family in the Holocaust. One man, one lifetime. No clean way to hold it. Did you know a nuclear weapon was detonated on this planet and no government has ever admitted it? On September 22nd, 1979, an American Vela satellite picked up a double flash over the South Atlantic near South Africa. That double flash had one meaning. It had correctly identified dozens of nuclear tests before this one. No country claimed it. No country denied it. The United States launched multiple investigations. One panel called it a meteoroid strike, but the CIA's own analysts disagreed. Most physicists who studied the data concluded it was a nuclear weapon, almost certainly tested jointly by Israel and South Africa. Declassified documents released decades later confirmed the government knew far more than it ever said publicly. Here's what makes this different from other cover-ups. A nuclear weapon went off on this Earth, not in a simulation, not in a story. It actually happened. And right now, today, the official position of every government connected to that event is the same. Complete silence. No admission, no denial, just nothing, which is somehow the most unsettling answer of all. The Soviet Union once executed an innocent man to prove serial killers didn't exist. In the 1970s, Soviet officials believed that serial murder was a product of capitalism. It simply could not happen inside a socialist state. So when bodies started appearing across southern Russia, no one was allowed to connect them. Andrei Chikatilo killed his first victim in 1978, then another, then another. For 12 years, investigators were quietly forbidden from treating the murders as the work of one man, because admitting that would mean admitting the system had lied. When an innocent man was convicted and executed for one of Chikatilo's early killings, the state said nothing. When the KGB finally got involved, their main concern wasn't catching the killer. It was containing the embarrassment of what catching him would reveal. Chikatilo was finally arrested in 1990 after at least 52 murders. He had been protected, not by anyone who knew him, but by a government so committed to its own story that it simply could not see what was happening inside it. The US military once voted to bomb American cities and blame it on Cuba. In 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff drew up a plan called Operation Northwoods. All 6 of them signed it. The document was detailed. It described staging terrorist attacks on American soil, sinking boats, shooting down a plane, fabricating a Cuban hijacking, all of it designed to manufacture a reason to invade Cuba. These weren't fringe radicals. These were the highest-ranking military officers in the country, and they were proposing to kill American civilians on purpose, in writing, with their signatures at the bottom. The plan moved up the chain and landed on President Kennedy's desk. He said no. Kennedy rejected it, removed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs from his post, and the document was buried. It sat classified for 35 years. When it was finally released in 1997, most people had never heard of it. One president's refusal is the only reason Operation Northwoods stayed a plan and never became history. Britain had a sniper lined up to kill Hitler. They chose not to pull the trigger. By 1944, the Special Operations Executive had built a complete assassination plan codenamed Operation Foxley. They had surveillance reports on Hitler's mountain retreat, the Berghof. They had mapped his morning walks. They had identified the sniper positions. The shot was there. But senior figures inside the British establishment made a calculation that is almost impossible to argue with. Hitler was losing the war for Germany himself. His obsessive interference in Wehrmacht's strategy was costing the German military more than any Allied operation could. He overruled his generals. He held ground that should have been abandoned. He made catastrophic decisions on instinct. And the fear was this: kill Hitler, and someone competent might take his place. So they let him live. The files stayed classified until 1998, 54 years after the plan was ready. The most viable assassination plot of the war was shelved, not because it would fail, but because it might succeed. The son of America's most powerful family vanished, and his family never looked for the truth. In November 1961, Michael Rockefeller was 23 years old, collecting art in the remote jungles of New Guinea. His boat capsized miles from shore. Rather than wait, he decided to swim for it. He was never seen again. His father, Nelson Rockefeller, the governor of New York, launched a massive search. Nothing was found. The official story settled on drowning and stayed there for decades. But a journalist named Carl Hoffman spent years digging through Dutch colonial records and Asmat tribal oral histories. What he found was specific and consistent. Weeks before Michael disappeared, Dutch officers had shot and killed several Asmat warriors. The Asmat had a tradition. Certain deaths demanded payback. Multiple witnesses across different villages told the same story. A young white man came ashore. He was killed in a ritual act of justice. His body was consumed according to custom. The evidence points one direction. The Rockefeller family has never said a word. A 17-year-old built a nuclear reactor in his mom's backyard shed. His name was David Hahn, and in 1994, he was obsessed with becoming an Eagle Scout. He wanted to earn every merit badge, including atomic energy, so he started experimenting. He pulled radioactive material out of smoke detectors. He extracted thorium from camping lantern mantles. He ordered equipment by mail and taught himself nuclear chemistry from library books. Nobody stopped him. Nobody even noticed. Working alone in a small potting shed in suburban Michigan, he eventually assembled something close to a working breeder reactor. By the time anyone found out, radiation levels around his neighborhood had reached 1,000 times above normal background levels. The EPA declared it a federal emergency. Hazmat teams in full protective suits dismantled the shed and buried the pieces as nuclear waste. David was never the same. Years of unprotected exposure left permanent damage on his body. He died at 39. The most frightening part was not what he built. It was how long nobody knew. Did you know a man once became so radioactive his body was classified as nuclear waste? In 1976, Harold McCluskey was working at the Hanford nuclear site in Washington when a chemical explosion blew a Americium-241 directly into his face. He absorbed more internal radiation than any living person ever recorded. Geiger counters alarmed the moment he walked into a room. His own wife could not touch him. Doctors had never seen anything like it. There was no treatment protocol, no medical literature, no roadmap. They built his care from scratch while debating whether keeping him alive in a hospital was a public health risk. For 5 years, he lived in isolation while a team worked to pull the contamination from his body. Against every expectation, it worked. He was eventually released and lived 11 more years. But when Harold McCluskey died in 1987, his body could not be buried like a normal person. It had to be disposed of as radioactive waste. He survived the accident. He just never stopped being radioactive. The FBI's top spy hunter was secretly working for the enemy. For 22 years, Robert Hansen walked into FBI headquarters every morning, sat inside the counterintelligence division, and sold America's deepest secrets to the Soviet Union. He wasn't a rogue agent who got desperate. He was methodical. He studied every detection method the FBI used, and then used that knowledge to make himself invisible. He gave Moscow the names of Soviet officers secretly working for the United States. Those men were executed. He handed over details of a classified tunnel the U.S. had secretly dug beneath the Soviet embassy. He gave them America's entire nuclear war strategy, and for over 2 decades, nobody caught him. In the end, the FBI didn't outsmart him. They paid a Russian source $7 million for an old file that had Hansen's fingerprints on it. The man who knew exactly how spies got caught had only one blind spot. He never considered that someone would simply sell him out. A plane landed with 18 feet of its roof completely torn off. On April 28, 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was cruising at 24,000 feet when a massive section of the fuselage ripped away. Passengers were suddenly sitting in open sky, traveling at 500 miles per hour. The pilots had no training for this. No protocol existed for a plane still flying with a hole this size, because nothing like it had ever happened before. They landed the aircraft anyway. But the investigation that followed revealed something worse than the accident itself. The FAA's inspection system had been structurally incapable of detecting the kind of corrosion that caused the failure. And the aviation industry had known for years that aging aircraft were developing exactly this problem. No one had acted. Flight attendant Clarabelle Lansing was standing in the cabin when the roof tore away. She was swept out over the Pacific and never recovered. She was the only fatality in a disaster that every other passenger survived. The plane was fixable. The system that missed it was the real problem. On May 5, 1945, American and German soldiers fought side by side in the same battle. 3 days before Germany's surrender, a group of French prisoners was trapped inside Castle Itter in the Austrian Alps. These were not ordinary prisoners. They included former prime ministers, a tennis champion, and a French general. And the SS was coming to execute them all before the war could end. A U.S. Army captain named John Lee had just 12 tanks and a handful of men. Not nearly enough. So a Wehrmacht major named Josef Gangl made him an offer. His German soldiers would fight alongside the Americans to save the prisoners. Lee said yes. On the morning of May 5th, American GIs and German Wehrmacht soldiers loaded their weapons and defended the same castle walls together against a full SS assault. They held, but Gangl was killed by a sniper during the fighting, just hours before peace arrived. The last battle of World War II in Europe was Germans and Americans fighting Germans. And the men who chose which side to stand on had less than an hour to decide. The CIA once stole a Soviet nuclear submarine while Howard Hughes watched. In 1968, a Soviet sub carrying nuclear torpedoes sank 3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. The Soviets searched for months and found nothing. The CIA found it first. The problem was getting it back up without anyone knowing. So they built a cover story so enormous it was almost impossible to believe. They convinced the world that billionaire Howard Hughes was launching a revolutionary deep-sea mining company. They constructed the Glomar Explorer, a 618-foot vessel purpose-built for a single secret mission. Soviet surveillance ships circled it the entire time, watching what they thought was a mining operation. In the summer of 1974, the CIA lifted the wreck from the ocean floor. They recovered nuclear torpedoes. They recovered cryptographic equipment, and they recovered the bodies of 6 Soviet sailors. What happened next was never meant to be seen. CIA officers held a full military burial at sea, in Russian, with full honors, and filmed every moment of it. Americans in secret, mourning the men they were robbing. Churchill once fired a pistol at ice in a hotel bathroom to win a war. In 1942, a British inventor named Geoffrey Pike had an idea that sounded completely insane. He wanted to build an aircraft carrier out of ice. Not pure ice, but a mixture of ice and wood pulp he called Picrete. It stopped bullets. It barely melted. And it was cheap enough to build at a massive scale. Churchill loved it so much he brought a block to the Quebec Conference and shot it in front of Allied commanders to prove the point. The bullet bounced off. A working prototype was secretly built in the Canadian Rockies, hidden inside a mountain lake. It was real. It worked. And then the war moved on, conventional carriers became available, and the project was quietly dropped. Nobody ever retrieved the prototype. It just sat at the bottom of that lake for over 40 years, completely forgotten, until a group of divers stumbled across it in 1988 and had no idea what they were looking at. The ship that was supposed to change the war had been there the whole time. A man was lost at sea for over a year and somehow came back alive. In November 2012, fisherman Jose Salvador Alvarenga left the Mexican coast for a short 2-day trip. A violent storm pushed him off course and destroyed his engine. He had no way back. For 438 days, he drifted across the open Pacific. He caught fish with his bare hands. He drank turtle blood. He ate seabirds raw. He survived on instinct and sheer will. But he wasn't alone at the start. A young fisherman named Ezequiel Cordoba was with him. Cordoba couldn't adapt to the conditions. He grew sick, refused to eat, and died somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Alvarenga was alone for the rest of the drift. When he finally washed ashore in the Marshall Islands, the world called him a miracle. Then Cordoba's family filed a lawsuit. They alleged Alvarenga had eaten their son's body to survive. He denied it. The case went to court, and the world had to decide what survival actually costs.